It was a quiet morning in the city of Detroit where Tasha Wellington sat at her desk overlooking the skyline. Her office walls were lined with awards and certificates that told the story of her journey, a black woman who had built an empire from scratch. She owned Wellington Motors, one of the fastest-growing luxury car dealership chains in the country. But despite all her success, something kept nagging at her. Tasha often heard stories about how customers treated her employees. Some clients seemed polite on the surface but would subtly dismiss workers based on their race or gender. Others didn't even bother hiding their biases. They'd raise their voices, demand to speak to someone higher up, or outright insult staff members. These weren't just rumors. They came directly from her team during feedback sessions. One day, while sipping her coffee, Tasha decided she needed to see this for herself. No more secondhand accounts, no more guessing games. She wanted to step into her employees' shoes and experience what they went through daily. So, she hatched a plan to go undercover as a regular worker at one of her own dealerships. The next morning, Tasha woke up earlier than usual. She stood in front of her mirror, staring at her reflection. Gone were the designer suits and perfectly styled hair. Instead, she wore a plain blazer, minimal makeup, and pulled her hair back into a simple bun. She looked different, ordinary, almost invisible. And that's exactly what she wanted. When she arrived at the dealership, she introduced herself as Tina, a temporary assistant manager sent by corporate headquarters. Her goal? To blend in and observe everything without drawing attention. The staff welcomed her warmly, unaware that they were meeting their boss in disguise. As the doors opened to the public, the showroom quickly filled with people, families, walked around, admiring shiny SUVs, while young professionals eyed sleek sports cars. Tasha moved quietly among them, watching closely. She took notes whenever she saw a customer interact with a salesperson. Most conversations were polite, even friendly. But there was tension lurking beneath the surface, something Tasha could sense but couldn't quite put her finger on yet. Then it happened. A man walked in wearing an expensive suit, oozing confidence or maybe arrogance. He ignored the greeter completely and headed straight for the display area. Tasha noticed him immediately. There was something about his body language that set off alarm bells in her mind. Still, she approached him with a warm smile, ready to offer assistance. "Hi there. Welcome to Wellington Motors. How can I help you today?" she said cheerfully. The man glanced at her briefly before frowning. "You?" he asked, his tone dripping with disbelief. "I need to speak to someone higher up." Tasha kept her cool. "Of course, sir. Let me know what kind of vehicle you're looking for, and I'll make sure we get you connected with the right person." He shook his head dismissively. "Look, I don't think you'd understand what I'm looking for. Can I talk to your manager instead?" His words stung, but Tasha didn't let it show. This wasn't the first time someone had doubted her abilities because of how she looked. But this time she knew it wouldn't end here. She nodded politely and gestured toward the office. "Let me grab them for you," she said smoothly. Got as she turned to leave. The man muttered under his breath, loud enough for her to hear, "This place is going downhill if they're hiring people like her." Tasha froze for a moment, letting the comment sink in. Then she took a deep breath and reminded herself why she was doing this: to uncover the truth, to understand the challenges her employees faced every single day. With renewed determination, she continued walking, already planning her next move. Little did the man know, he was about to meet someone far more powerful than he could have imagined. And little did Tasha know, this encounter would change both of their lives forever. The showroom buzzed with energy as Tasha, still going by Tina, moved through the crowd. She kept her focus sharp, observing every interaction between customers and staff. Some clients were polite, asking thoughtful questions about features and pricing. Others seemed distracted, scrolling on their phones while half listening to the salespeople. But then there was him. The man in the expensive suit stood near a gleaming luxury sedan, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His posture screamed impatience, like he owned the place and everyone in it worked for him. Tasha had already caught a glimpse of his attitude when she first approached him, but now she decided to watch from a distance. She wanted to see how he treated others before stepping in again, a young sales associate. A woman in her mid-20s walked up to him with a friendly smile. "Good morning. Are you interested in this model? It's one of our most popular options." The man barely glanced at her. "Not really," he said curtly. "I'm looking for something more exclusive." The sales associate nodded, unfazed by his tone. "Of course. We have several high-end models that might interest you. Let me show you." "I don't think you'd know what I'm looking for," he interrupted, his voice laced with condescension. "Can I speak to someone who actually knows these cars?" The young woman hesitated for a split second, then recovered gracefully. "Absolutely. Let me get someone else to assist you." Tasha watched the entire exchange, her jaw tightening slightly. She recognized the look on the man's face, the same dismissive expression she'd seen countless times throughout her career. It wasn't just about being rude. It was about making assumptions based on appearances. The young sales associate handled it well, but Tasha could tell the comment stung. Deciding it was time to intervene, Tasha stepped forward once more. She approached the man with a calm demeanor, determined not to let his attitude rattle her. "Hi again," she said warmly. "I understand you're looking for something specific. Can I help guide you toward the right option?" The man turned to her, his eyes narrowing as if trying to figure out why she was still around. "You again?" he said bluntly. "Look, I already told your colleague I need someone who knows what they're talking about." Tasha forced herself to stay composed. "I assure you, I do know what I'm talking about. Our team is highly trained, and I personally oversee operations here. If you'd like, I can walk you through some of our top-tier vehicles." He scoffed, shaking his head. "You oversee things? Come on, don't insult my intelligence. You're clearly just an assistant or something." His words hit hard, but Tasha didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned in slightly, maintaining eye contact. "Sir, I promise you, I'm qualified to answer any questions you have. Why don't we start with what you're looking for in a vehicle? Performance? Comfort technology?" For a moment, the man looked taken aback, as if surprised by her persistence. But instead of answering, he waved her off. "Forget it, just send me someone higher up. Someone who actually belongs here." Tasha felt a pang of frustration, but she refused to let it show. This wasn't just about her, it was about all the employees who faced similar treatment daily. She took a deep breath and tried one last time. "If you'd prefer, I can bring over the manager. But I want to make sure you understand you're in good hands either way." The man rolled his eyes dramatically. "Fine, whatever. Just hurry up." As Tasha turned to fetch the manager, she couldn't help but notice the tension in the air. Other customers nearby had started glancing over, sensing the awkwardness of the situation. Even some of the staff members were watching nervously, unsure of what would happen next. When she returned with the actual manager, young white man in his early 30s, the change in the man's demeanor was immediate. His shoulders relaxed, and a slight smile appeared on his face. "Ah, finally," he said, shaking the manager's hand firmly. "Now we're talking. I've been dealing with incompetence all morning." Tasha stood quietly to the side, her arms crossed, observing the scene unfold. The manager launched into a detailed explanation of the dealership's inventory, pointing out various features of the cars. The man listened intently, nodding along as if everything suddenly made sense now that a different person was explaining it. But Tasha noticed something else too. Every few minutes, the man would glance at her, almost as if he was checking whether she was still there. When their eyes met, he quickly looked away, avoiding her gaze. At one point, he turned to her abruptly. "Why are you still hovering? This isn't your level. Go do whatever it is assistants do." The comment drew a sharp intake of breath from the manager, who shot Tasha an apologetic look. For a moment, the room fell silent. Everyone waited to see how she would respond. Tasha took a step forward, her voice steady and clear. "Actually, sir, I oversee operations across all our locations. If there's something specific you'd like to discuss, I'm happy to assist." The man blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Oversee? Don't be ridiculous. Someone like you?" couldn't possibly run a business like this. Tasha raised an eyebrow, her patience wearing thin. Someone like me? The man faltered, realizing he might have gone too far. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. It was in that moment that Tasha knew she had him cornered. And she wasn't done yet. The room seemed to freeze as Tasha locked eyes with the man in the expensive suit. His face twisted into a mix of confusion and disbelief, like he was trying to process what she had just said. For a moment, no one spoke, neither the manager, standing awkwardly beside him, nor the handful of customers who had turned their attention to the unfolding drama. Even the hum of conversation in the background faded away. Tasha didn't break eye contact. She stood tall, her arms crossed, exuding a quiet confidence that demanded respect. Her tone was calm but firm when she finally spoke again. "Let me assure you," she said, her voice cutting through the silence, "I not only run this business, I own it." The words hung in the air like thunderclouds before a storm. The man blinked rapidly, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for something to say. His earlier arrogance cracked under the weight of her declaration. He shifted uncomfortably, glancing around the room as though hoping someone would jump in and save him from the situation. "You own this place?" he stammered, his voice noticeably softer now. "That's right," Tasha replied without missing a beat. "And I've been here since the beginning, working hard to build Wellington Motors into what it is today. So, when you say someone like me couldn't possibly run a business like this, I have to ask, what exactly do you mean by someone like me?" Her question hit him like a punch to the gut. The man's face flushed red and beads of sweat began forming on his forehead. He looked trapped, cornered by his own words. A murmur rippled through the crowd of onlookers, some nodding in agreement while others simply watched with wide eyes. I didn't mean anything by it," he stuttered, fumbling for an explanation. "It's just, well, you don't look like the kind of person who what?" Tasha pressed gently but firmly. "Someone who owns a luxury car dealership? Someone who knows these cars inside and out? Or are we talking about something else entirely?" The man swallowed hard, visibly struggling to find a way out of the hole he'd dug for himself. "Look, I didn't realize who you were. Honestly, I thought you were just, you're dressed so casually and, His voice trailed off, realizing too late how poorly his excuses sounded. Tasha tilted her head slightly, studying him with a mixture of curiosity and disappointment. "So let me get this straight," she said after a pause. "You judged me based on how I look and assumed I wasn't capable of helping you. Is that correct?" He nodded weakly, unable to meet her gaze. "And yet," Tasha continued, her tone softening slightly, "when my manager stepped in, a younger white man, you immediately trusted him without question. Why is that?" The man opened his mouth to respond, but quickly closed it again. There was no easy answer to her question, and they both knew it. Tasha took a step closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Here's the thing. People make assumptions every day. They decide who's worthy of respect or authority based on things like skin color, gender, or even clothing. But those assumptions aren't harmless. They affect real lives. They hurt. People who work twice as hard to prove themselves because society keeps telling them they don't belong." She paused, letting her words sink in before addressing him directly once more. "Now that we've established my credentials, perhaps we can move past your assumptions and focus on finding you a car. Or would you prefer to take your business elsewhere?" For a long moment, the man said nothing. His shoulders slumped, and the cocky demeanor he'd walked in with was gone. Finally, he mumbled, No, that won't be necessary. I'll stay." Tasha nodded, satisfied that he had been forced to confront his biases, at least for now. Turning to the manager, she gestured for him to continue assisting the man. As she stepped back, the tension in the room slowly began to ease. Customers resumed browsing, and employees exchanged knowing glances, many silently applauding Tasha's handling of the situation. But Tasha wasn't done yet. She signaled for the young sales associate, the same woman the man had dismissed earlier, to join her. Together they approached the man, flanking him on either side. "Since you're interested in high-end vehicles," Tasha said smoothly, Our associate here happens to specialize in custom orders and exclusive models. She can walk you through some of our top-tier options." The man hesitated, clearly uncomfortable being put on the spot again. But there was no graceful way to refuse, especially after everything that had just happened. Reluctantly, he nodded as the associate began explaining the features of a high-performance sedan. Tasha lingered nearby, watching carefully. The man listened quietly, occasionally nodding, but his earlier bravado was completely gone. It was clear he was making an effort to appear polite, though his discomfort was still evident. When the interaction ended, the man thanked the associate curtly and hurried toward the exit. Before leaving, he glanced back at Tasha, his expression a mix of shame and regret. "I'm sorry," he muttered. Barely loud enough for her to hear, Tasha gave him a small, measured smile. "Apology accepted. Just remember this moment the next time you meet someone new." With that, the man disappeared out the door, leaving behind a ripple of murmurs among the staff and customers. Several employees approached Tasha, congratulating her on how she handled the situation. One of them whispered, "That felt good to watch. You really showed him." Tasha chuckled softly but shook her head. "This isn't about showing anyone up. It's about calling out behavior that shouldn't be tolerated. We all deserve respect, no matter who we are or what we look like." Her words resonated deeply with those around her. Some nodded in agreement, while others shared stories of similar experiences they'd faced in their own lives. Tasha listened intently, grateful for the honesty and vulnerability of her team. As the day wore on, Tasha found herself reflecting on the encounter. She hadn't expected the confrontation to play out quite like that, but it reinforced why she had decided to go undercover in the first place. This wasn't just about catching prejudiced customers, it was about understanding the daily struggles of her employees and using her position to create meaningful change, and she knew this was only the beginning. After the man in the expensive suit left the dealership, the energy in the showroom shifted. The tension that had been thick in the air began to dissolve, replaced by a mix of relief and quiet triumph. Tasha stood near the front desk, watching as employees went back to their tasks, greeting customers with renewed enthusiasm. But she knew this wasn't the end of the story, not for her, not for her team, and certainly not for the lessons they all needed to take away from what had just happened. She decided it was time to gather. Everyone together, walking toward the break room, she called out to the staff, "Hey, can we have a quick meeting? Just 10 minutes, nothing formal?" The team filed in one by one, curiosity written on their faces. Some already guessed what this was about, while others were unsure why their boss in disguise wanted to talk. Tasha pulled up a chair and sat down at the same level as her employees, signaling that this wasn't going to be a lecture, it was a conversation. First, she began, "I want to thank you all for how you handled things today. You've got professionalism and patience in spades, and I see it every day. But let's be real, what happened earlier isn't unusual, is it?" A few heads shook and someone muttered, "No, it's not." Tasha nodded, "Exactly. That's why I'm here undercover. I wanted to experience firsthand what some of you deal with daily, and honestly, it's eye-opening. Even though I've faced my share of bias over the years, seeing it happen right in front of me today reminded me how much work still needs to be done." One of the newer employees raised her hand timidly. Tina, do you think people will ever stop making assumptions like that?" Tasha smiled gently. "Probably not completely. People are wired to categorize and judge quickly, it's human nature. But that doesn't mean we have to accept it or let it define us. What matters is how we respond when it happens. Today, I chose to address it directly because sometimes people need to hear the truth to realize their behavior is wrong." Another employee spoke up, his voice tinged with frustration. "But isn't it exhausting? Having to prove yourself over and over again, no matter how good you are at your job." "It is," Tasha admitted without hesitation. "And that's why I wanted to understand what you go through. When someone doubts your abilities because of how you look, it hurts. It makes you question yourself, even if deep down you know you're capable. But here's the thing, you're not alone. We're a team, and we lift each other up If someone tries to bring you down, remember that you've earned your place here. Don't let anyone make you forget that. Her words resonated deeply with the group. Several employees nodded, some exchanging knowing looks. One older man who had worked at the dealership for years leaned forward. I've seen this kind of thing happen too many times. Young folks get treated like they don't know anything, women get talked down to, and people of color? Well, you saw it yourself. It's frustrating, but hearing you call it out today, that felt good, like maybe things can change. Tasha smiled warmly. That's exactly why I did it. Change starts with awareness and accountability. None of U.S. should tolerate disrespect, whether it's aimed at us or someone else. So, moving forward, I want us to create a culture where everyone feels valued and supported. No more brushing off rude comments or letting biases slide. Deal? The team murmured in agreement, their spirits lifting as they realized they weren't fighting these battles alone. Someone joked, "Guess we'll have to start calling you Boss Lady instead of Tina now," which drew laughter from the group. When the meeting ended, Tasha returned to the showroom, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. She noticed the young sales associate, the same woman the man had dismissed earlier, standing near a display car, looking thoughtful. "How are you holding up?" Tasha asked, joining her. The associate shrugged. "I'm okay. Stuff like that happens sometimes. I try not to take it personally, but it still stings, you know?" "I know," Tasha said softly. "And it's okay to feel that way. What's important is that you didn't let him shake your confidence. You stayed professional, and that says a lot about who you are." The associate smiled faintly. "Thanks. Hearing you stand up to him today meant a lot. Made me feel like maybe I don't have to put up with that kind of treatment anymore." "That's the spirit," Tasha encouraged. "We're stronger together. If something like that happens again, don't hesitate to speak up or come find me. We're a team, and we've got each other's backs." As the day wound down, Tasha reflected on everything she had learned. Going undercover hadn't just given her insight into her employees' struggles, it had also reminded her of her own journey. From the early days of building Wellington Motors to becoming one of the most respected figures in the industry, she had faced countless obstacles fueled by prejudice. Yet she had always found strength in resilience and community. That evening, as she prepared to leave the dealership, Tasha made a promise to herself. This experience wouldn't just stay within these walls. She would use it to spark bigger conversations about equality, respect, and creating spaces where everyone could thrive without fear of judgment. Little did she know, word of the incident was already spreading beyond the showroom. A local journalist who happened to be visiting the dealership that day had witnessed the confrontation and approached Tasha before she left. "Excuse me," the journalist said, holding out a business card. "I couldn't help but notice what happened earlier. Would you mind sharing your perspective? Stories like yours inspire change." Tasha hesitated for a moment, then took the card. "Sure, let's talk tomorrow." As she drove home, she thought about the ripple effect of standing up for what was right. One confrontation in a car dealership might seem small in the grand scheme of things, but it had the power to ignite something much larger, and that was a lesson worth sharing with the world. The next morning, Tasha arrived at the dealership early, still buzzing with energy from the previous day's events. She had agreed to meet with the journalist who had approached her, but before that, she wanted to check in with her team. As she walked through the showroom, she noticed a different vibe in the air. Employees greeted her warmly, some even teasing her about her undercover mission. "Hey, boss lady," one of them joked. "You think you'll stick around as Tina for a few more days? We kinda liked having you on the floor." Tasha laughed, shaking her head. "I think my cover's blown now. But seriously, how are you all feeling after yesterday?" The question prompted a mix of responses. Some employees admitted they felt empowered, while others confessed they were still processing what had happened. One young man spoke up, his voice thoughtful. "It's like, I always knew people judged me based on how I look or talk, but seeing it play out so clearly yesterday made me realize just how unfair it is. And yet, watching you handle it gave me hope." Like maybe we can fight back against those biases without losing ourselves in the process. Tasha nodded, touched by his honesty. That's exactly what I want for all of us to feel confident enough to stand our ground. It's not easy, though. Trust me, I've been there. But every time we challenge those assumptions, we chip away at the system that created them. Her words lingered in the air as the team dispersed to start their day. Tasha headed to her office to prepare for the interview with the journalist. When the woman arrived, a middle-aged reporter with sharp eyes and a notebook full of questions, Tasha greeted her warmly. So, the journalist began, settling into a chair across from her. Can you tell me about what happened yesterday? The story's already making rounds online, but I'd love to hear your perspective. Tasha took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. Sure, yesterday was an eye-opener not just for me, but for everyone involved. I went undercover to understand what my employees experience daily when customers walk in with preconceived notions about who they are and what they're capable of. What I saw confirmed what I'd suspected. Bias is alive and well, and it affects people in ways most of us don't even realize. The journalist scribbled notes furiously, occasionally nodding, and then there was the confrontation with the customer. Yes, Tasha continued. He came in expecting a certain type of person to assist him. When he saw me, an ordinary-looking black woman, he dismissed me immediately. He assumed I couldn't possibly be in charge, let alone own the business. It wasn't until I revealed who I really was that he realized his mistake. How did he react? The journalist asked, leaning forward slightly. At first, he tried to backtrack, apologizing and saying he didn't mean any harm. But here's the thing: bias often hides behind phrases like, I didn't mean anything by it. People say things without thinking because society has conditioned them to believe stereotypes are harmless. They aren't. Those assumptions hurt real people, and they reinforce systems of inequality. The journalist paused, considering Tasha's words. Do you think he learned something from the experience? I hope so, Tasha replied honestly. But learning isn't just about saying sorry, it's about changing behavior. If he walks out of here and treats the next person of color or woman with respect, then maybe this moment will have mattered. Otherwise, it's just another empty apology. The journalist smiled faintly. That's powerful. Do you think sharing this story publicly could help spark broader conversations about bias and discrimination? Absolutely, Tasha said firmly. Stories like mine remind people that bias exists everywhere, even in places you wouldn't expect, like a luxury car dealership. By talking about it openly, we create opportunities for growth. We force people to confront uncomfortable truths and ask themselves, am I part of the problem, or am I willing to be part of the solution? The interview wrapped up shortly after, leaving Tasha with a sense of purpose. She knew the article would bring attention to her dealership and to her, but more importantly, it would shine a light on issues that needed addressing. Later that afternoon, word spread quickly among the staff that a local news outlet was writing about the incident. Some employees were excited, eager to see their boss featured in such a positive light. Others were nervous, wondering if the publicity might attract negative attention. Tasha gathered everyone once again to reassure them. This isn't about me, she told the group. It's about creating awareness and starting conversations that lead to change. Yes, the spotlight is on us right now, but that gives us a chance to show the world what we stand for: respect, inclusivity, and equality. Let's embrace it. Her words inspired confidence, and the team left the meeting feeling united. Over the next few days, the article went live, sparking discussions both locally and online. Readers praised Tasha for her courage and leadership, while others shared their own experiences of facing bias in the workplace. Social media lit up with hashtags like #RespectInAction and #StandYourGround, turning Tasha's personal story into a movement. Meanwhile, the man in the expensive suit couldn't escape the backlash. Videos of his encounter with Tasha surfaced online, showing his dismissive attitude and subsequent embarrassment. Comments flooded in, criticizing his behavior and calling him out for his prejudices. Friends and colleagues reportedly reached out to express disappointment, forcing him to confront the damage his actions had caused. Humiliated but determined to make amends, the man reached out to Tasha directly. He sent her a handwritten letter, delivered to the dealership a week later. In it, he apologized profusely, acknowledging his biases and thanking her for teaching him a valuable lesson. "Dear Miss Wellington," the letter began, "I owe you an apology not just for my behavior that day, but for the years of ignorance that led to it. I never realized how my assumptions affected others until you called me out. You handled the situation with grace and dignity, and I deeply admire your strength. Please know that I'm committed to doing better, both personally and professionally." When Tasha read the letter, she felt a mix of emotions. Part of her wanted to dismiss it outright. He had acted poorly. After all, but another part recognized the sincerity in his words. Change wasn't easy, especially for someone accustomed to privilege. If he was genuinely willing to learn, then perhaps forgiveness was worth considering. She decided to respond, not with anger but with encouragement. "Thank you for reaching out," she wrote in her reply. "Apologies are important, but they're only the first step. True growth comes from action. Show me and the world that you've changed by treating everyone with the respect they deserve, regardless of who they are or where they come from." The exchange marked a turning point for both of them. For Tasha, it reinforced her belief in the power of accountability and redemption. For the man, it became a catalyst for self-reflection and transformation. As weeks turned into months, Tasha continued using her platform to advocate for equality. She implemented mandatory diversity training at her dealerships and created policies to ensure respectful treatment for all employees and customers. Her efforts earned praise from industry leaders and community members alike, solidifying her reputation as a trailblazer. Through it all, Tasha remained grounded, remembering why she started this journey in the first place: to uplift those around her and challenge the status quo. Every interaction, every conversation, and every act of kindness contributed to a larger goal, one that extended far beyond the walls of Wellington Motors. Because sometimes standing up for what's right doesn't just change one life, it changes countless others along the way. Months had passed since the day Tasha confronted the man in the expensive suit, but the impact of that moment continued to ripple outward. What started as a single incident at Wellington Motors had grown into something much larger, a movement fueled by awareness, accountability, and action. For Tasha, it wasn't just about what happened inside her dealership anymore. It was about creating lasting change in the world beyond its walls. Every morning, she arrived at work with a renewed sense of purpose. Her team noticed the shift too. Employees who once hesitated to speak up now felt empowered to share their thoughts and experiences openly. Weekly meetings became spaces for honest conversations, not just about sales, targets, or customer service, but about how they could foster a more inclusive environment. One afternoon, during one of these meetings, an older employee stood up and shared a story that brought tears to everyone's eyes. "I've been working here for over 20 years, he said, his voice steady but emotional. "In all that time, I've seen so many changes, good ones and bad ones, but this feels different. It's like we're finally talking about things that matter instead of pretending everything's fine. And that makes me proud to be part of this company." His words resonated deeply with the group. Applause broke out, followed by heartfelt nods and murmurs of agreement. Tasha listened quietly, her heart swelling with gratitude. She knew moments like this were why she had taken the risk of going undercover in the first place, but the transformation wasn't limited to her team. Customers also began noticing the positive energy at Wellington Motors. Families walked in hesitant at first, but left smiling after being treated with genuine care and respect. Young professionals praised the staff for their knowledge and professionalism, while seasoned car enthusiasts appreciated the attention to detail. Word of mouth spread quickly, turning the dealership into a trusted name not just locally but across the region. The media coverage from the journalist's article played a big role in amplifying Tasha's message. After the piece went viral, invitations poured in for her to speak at conferences, workshops, and community events. At first, she hesitated. Public speaking wasn't her favorite thing, but eventually, She realized the opportunity was too important to pass up. Her speeches were simple yet powerful. She didn't rely on fancy jargon or complicated theories. Instead, she spoke directly from her heart, sharing personal stories and lessons learned along the way. When I started my business, she told a packed auditorium during one such event, I faced doubts everywhere I turned. People looked at me and saw a black woman. They didn't see a CEO. They assumed I couldn't handle the pressure, let alone succeed. But you know what? Those assumptions didn't stop me. If anything, they pushed me harder. Because every time someone underestimated me, I proved them wrong, not out of spite, but because I believed in myself. The audience erupted in applause, many rising to their feet. Tasha smiled humbly, motioning for them to sit back down. This isn't about me, though, she continued. It's about all of us. We live in a world where bias is baked into almost every system we interact with. But that doesn't mean we're powerless against it. Every act of kindness, every challenge to prejudice, every effort to lift someone up, it matters. Change starts small, but it grows when we commit to it together. Her words inspired countless listeners, sparking initiatives in workplaces, schools, and communities. Leaders in various industries reached out to collaborate, asking for advice on implementing diversity programs and fostering inclusivity. Tasha welcomed these partnerships, knowing that real progress required collective effort. Back at the dealership, life settled into a rhythm of growth and positivity. Sales numbers soared, thanks in large part to the strengthened bond between employees and customers. Staff members reported feeling happier and more motivated than ever before. Even the occasional difficult client couldn't dampen their spirits. They had each other's backs. And that made all the difference. As for the man in the expensive suit, he kept his promise to do better. He sent Tasha periodic updates, sharing how he was actively working to unlearn old habits and educate himself on topics like racial equity and unconscious bias. Though cautious at first, Tasha eventually invited him to visit the dealership again, not as a customer this time, but as a guest speaker for one of their training sessions. On the day of his visit, nerves crackled in the air. Employees exchanged curious glances, unsure what to expect. When the man stepped into the showroom, dressed casually and carrying a folder full of notes, silence fell over the room. "Thank you for having me," he began, his voice steady but tinged with humility. "I won't pretend I have all the answers. I'm still learning. But I want to share my journey so far in the hope that it might help others recognize their own biases and work toward change." He went on to describe the steps he'd taken, attending workshops, reading books written by marginalized voices, and engaging in uncomfortable but necessary conversations with friends and colleagues. By the end of his talk, several employees approached him to express appreciation for his honesty and vulnerability. Tasha watched the scene unfold with quiet satisfaction. "See," she said to herself, "growth is possible when people are willing to listen and learn." By the end of the year, Wellington Motors had become more than just a successful business. It was a symbol of resilience and unity. Awards lined the walls of Tasha's office, recognizing her leadership and commitment to social responsibility. Yet, none of those accolades meant as much to her as the smiles on her employees' faces or the trust reflected in her customers' eyes. One evening, as she locked up the dealership and prepared to head home, Tasha paused to take in the sight of the glowing showroom. Cars gleamed under the lights, but it was the people inside, their laughter, their determination, their shared purpose that truly lit up the space. She thought back to the day she decided to go undercover, wondering if she'd imagined how far this journey would take her. From exposing biases to inspiring change, every step had been worth it. And as she drove away, the city skyline stretching out before her, Tasha allowed herself a rare moment of pride. Not for what she had accomplished alone, but for the collective strength of everyone who had joined her along the way. Because change wasn't a solo act, it was a symphony, with each person playing their part, and together they were composing a brighter future.